Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be watching from, and welcome to AMN Healthcare International's live show on Welcome to our live show, Onwards and Upwards, where we discuss everything a global healthcare worker needs to know about living and working in the United States. If you are joining us for the first time, or maybe you are a regular viewer, I just want to say thank you and Happy New Year. Thank you for being here with us today. We are very excited for our immigration Q&A. We are going to be doing a lot of updates. We've got some positive news. We've got some interesting news. So we have a lot to share. If you are joining us and you are new and you don't know who we are AMN Healthcare International, the largest provider of both staffing and direct hire positions all across the United States. So if you are inspired today and you want to get started on your American journey, we would be honored and love to help you on that journey. We're going to drop the link in the chat. That link is going to be amnhealthcare.com/international, and our recruiters are on hand, ready and waiting to help you with your application. So don't delay. Get started today. So please let me know where you guys are watching from. I love to see where our viewers are watching from. We usually have people from all over the globe. I'm going to check the comments. Looks like we already have some people joining. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to Fancy from Kenya. We have Simone from Liberia. We have T. Gordon from Jamaica. Anzalia from Nepal. Arlene from Jamaica. I see some new faces. I see some old faces. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to come learn and come spend some time with us on this lovely Friday. So please also put your questions in the chat. We will be going and taking questions live for our immigration Q&A. We also have our director of recruitment who is going to be answering questions in the chat live. So don't worry, if we don't get to it live, she is going to be taking all of your questions in the chat. So without further ado, let's get started with our immigration Q&A. Let's bring out our expert attorneys. Good morning, Chris and Mike. Happy New Year. How are you both doing?
Good morning.
How you both doing?
We're
doing great.
We're loving this beautiful, snowy, cold weather in Ohio.
Well, then I won't tell you what the weather is right now in California. I won't make you too jealous, but at least you got to have a white Christmas. So
True.
I'm a little bit jealous of that.
There you go. True.
All right. Well, thank you both for joining us today. I would love you both to give a little bit of an introduction about yourselves, and then we will start taking some questions. So, Mike, why don't you go first?
Sure. My name is Mike Hammond. I'm an immigration attorney based in Cincinnati, Ohio. Been doing healthcare and IT immigration cases for about a long time, 30 years. So, and happy to be here.
Seasoned and knowledgeable and ready to share his experience. So put your questions in the chat, people. Mike will be taking them live. All right, Chris, you're up.
Right. So I'm Chris Masillo. I'm an immigration attorney. Good morning, Danielle and Mike. Look forward to today's session. We got a lot of interesting information that's come out in the last 30 days.
We sure do. The U.S. government has kept us on our seats. We have a lot to discuss. And if you didn't catch, I am Danielle Friedman. I am the host of this show. I've been doing this with Chris and Mike for a few years now, so we have seen a thing or two. So today is definitely going to be one of the more interesting immigration updates because, as Chris said, there's been a lot going on. So let's start with the positive news. It's 2026. Let's start with the positive news that came out for the February Visa Bulletin. Mike, can you give it to us?
Sure. So the February Bulletin was released earlier this week, and as you see the chart, it's up right now is the final action date chart, and two categories moved forward: the rest of the world EB3 to June 1st, 2023, and the Philippines June 1st, 2023. So we saw movement of about 5 weeks. That chart is the most important chart if you are overseas. because it means that your interview can be scheduled. You can be finally adjudicated and actually be issued a visa and then come into the U.S. So that was very good news. A little bit larger jump than what I expected for February, at least. And then the other chart that's up, what a lot of people refer to as chart B, which is the date for filing check. Is that chart as well? We don't have that chart in a graphic, but chart B moved forward 3 months for the Philippines and for rest of the world, all the way to October 1st, 2023. And then the next day, the USCIS announced that they would accept the date for filing chart for 45s for February. And you have a priority date prior to October 1st, 2023. You can file your 45. So that was a big jump and very, very welcome news. Since Chris and I both tend to view the date for filing chart as kind of a predictor of where the final action date chart is moving to. Not always in step, but generally speaking, they try to move forward in that direction. That's also good news in that maybe the final action date chart will move forward a little faster than expected for this fiscal year, based simply on the actions of the Visa Bulletin without respect to any of the bans, which I'm sure we're going to talk about later. So good news on the Visa Bulletin.
Okay. Well, good news on the Visa Bulletin. We're definitely going to get to the bans. I see all of your questions, everybody. I see lots of questions in the chat. We're definitely going to get to everything today. We have the full hour. Let's dig in just a little bit deeper, Mike, on that Visa Bulletin update that you gave. I just want to make sure that I understand. So you said that the date for filing chart B, move forward 3 months to October 1st, 2023. And usually we look at that chart as the date that we think the whole year is going to move for this fiscal year. Does that sound about right? Did I say that right?
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, I like to think of that the date for filing chart is the goal. This is the end line of where we think the final action date dates will get to as we progress through the fiscal year. So,
Okay.
And we were at July 1st. So moving to all the way to October 1st is a big jump.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely positive movement. What about you, Chris? Were you surprised by the movement? What do you think for the rest of this upcoming year? I know I see a lot of questions in here asking for some predictions. What are your best guesses, best thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really just echoing a lot of what Mike said, but just to reiterate some of the points, the first thing I'd say is, hey, this 6-week movement, this was the biggest movement we've had, I don't know how long, maybe 18, maybe 24 months, quite a lot. So that was very exciting news. And so a whole slew of people whose priority dates were in April and May of 23 now are current. So that's great news. But as Mike was talking about, I think maybe even the more exciting news is the twofold piece that chart B showed October 1, 23, and that the USCIS announced that they will start accepting adjustments of status 485s for any case through October. I think a way to think about that chart B is that's the State Department's best guess as to what next October's Visa Bulletin is going to be. That's a way to think about it. It's a simple rubric that we like to use. And so what you might suggest is that we've got the February Visa Bulletin, which is June 1st. We've got a prediction that the October Visa Bulletin is going to be October 1st. And so if anyone wants to figure out where we're going to go between February and October, just assume that it would move in a somewhat linear path from June to October, which is, that's pretty exciting. That's maybe a 3-week a month movement. Now, historically, we've not seen it move quite so linearly. So what we might see is maybe slow or no movement for a month, but then maybe another jump ahead of 4 or 6 weeks. But today, what the State Department is signaling to the immigration community is that they expect that by the end of the fiscal year, which is essentially October 1st, you could say it's September, But sometime in that September, October timeframe, the USCIS the USCIS and State Department expect that the Visa Bulletin will be in October of 2023, which would be almost exactly a 3-year retrogression, which is difficult, but historically that's probably a fairly average retrogression for the 25, 30 years that Mike and I have both been doing this. Mike was incorrect, by the way. He's been doing this for 35 years, but that's just between he and I.
Not nice.
Mike, you're saving off some of your experience? All right. Well, thank you both. So that's very positive. That's a positive way to go into 2026. We like to see some good movement on the Visa Bulletin, some good movement on that date for filing chart. So we have good hopes for the rest of this year. So let's switch gears. Let's talk a little bit about the travel ban and the visa pause that everybody has been talking about. If you've been following along with the news, there's a lot of words that can feel a little scary. There's a lot of information that can feel a little scary, and it's a little unknown. And as things constantly evolve, we're here to discuss it. We're here to give you the latest information and update you. So with that being said, I see lots of questions in the chat. I see Ronaldo says, how does the recent immigration pause on the 75 countries impact my EB3? Ashley's asking, will the new visa pause affect my EB3 visas as well? So a lot of questions on this. Let's take it one step at a time. So Mike, I'm going to turn to you. Can you kind of start us out and just talk about what's going on in the news? I see there's these two different travel ban, visa pause. Can you kind of explain to me what's going on? What do we need to know, especially for our healthcare workers around the world who are listening in?
Sure. So I think the best way to just start to try to understand this is to kind of break it into two categories. And the one category is the travel ban. And there's actually 3 different lists, and together they make up 39 countries. They've got a group that's 18 that's full with limited exceptions, partial with limited exceptions, and then one that has a different set. But bottom line, there's 39 countries. For purposes of people on this call who are mainly dealing with immigrant visas, so green card visas, they are right now under a ban. And what that means is there are going to be no immigrant visas issued at the consulate, which means that what you're going to do, and as they run through the chart, there's a lot that's on here, obviously 39 total. You're not going to, even if your priority date's current, you're not going to be able to go to the embassy and get your green card. The bans, the reason for the bans were laid out by the White House on a White House memo. And a lot of them have to do with things like your home country is not accepting persons being removed from the U.S., to a variety of other things that you can read through the list if you're interested. It's on the White House's website. For those individuals, right now, there are no exceptions being processed. So you are now on a hold where you can't go further if your priority date's current. Now, if your priority date's not current, it's today has no effect on you because you're still not current. It may have effect on you on the future, but today it doesn't. That list is going to be reviewed again, I believe they said in 180 days. And hopefully there'll be some adjustments to that list. So that's the, let's call it the ban list with a variety of different variations, but essentially a ban. And then the list that was most recently announced is a group of 75 countries. And these we're calling the pause list. And this was something that was announced, and there was a memo released yesterday or the day before explaining that all of this is designed to prevent public charge. Individuals coming to the U.S., immigrating to the U.S., and then going on some sort of welfare or needs-based program. These countries, 75, are not banned. They are simply on a extra vetting, a pause, extra consideration, etc., no matter how you want to describe it. Individuals from these countries can go to your interview. And if you're current, we're going to put together some additional documentation to help you take to your interview to help show that you're not going to be a public charge. But you are not expected to get approved the day of your interview. We expect you to go into what's called 221G processing, which is a generic term that simply means that they're looking for other information. In this case specifically, they're going to go through additional reviews, and likely the decisions are going to be made at a different level of exam at the front office that you would have interviewed with. We have no idea how long this delay will take. We don't know if your case will be held up for 30 days, 60 days, 180 days. We have no idea. What we do know is that you can go through the final interview, whereas if you're on the ban list, you cannot go, or you should not go to the final interview. We're encouraging people that if you have an interview scheduled and you're on the ban list, do not go. Cancel the interview. People that have gone have been denied and told that there is no exception that they're willing to take. The consulates, as we understand it, are actively working to cancel the interviews for the ban list, but nothing has been rescheduled yet, and I don't think they will be until you come off of the ban list. So that's a big overview. Lots of exceptions, lots of nuances to that, but that's a big picture.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. A lot to unpack there. That's very helpful. A good background. So it sounds to me like there are two different lists. There is one which is a travel ban list and one which is a visa issuance delay list, we're going to call it. And we had some graphics. I think there was maybe a little bit of confusion. So let's pull those back up with the full list of the countries that are under. This is under the full ban. That full ban where Mike was saying that we don't suggest that you go to the interview. If your priority date is not current, you'll still process. And then there's also under this ban, a partial ban. So we have that list of countries. And then separate from this list is a list of 75 that are under a pause. So under an extra vetting process, you're still going to move forward, but you're just having an extra pause until when, we do not know. Did I kind of sum that up correctly, Chris and Mike?
I think so.
Yep, I think so.
Okay. So how does it affect, so Chris, I'm going to turn to you. So both the ban and the pause, how does this affect someone who is processing? So let's talk about the situation where someone whose priority date is current and somebody whose priority date is not current. I know Mike kind of touched upon it, but let's just give everybody really good details. So if you're under one of the countries that's on the travel ban list and your priority date is current, then what? What are you all suggesting?
Yeah, you're probably just simply frozen. So the hypothetical that Danielle that you gave us is your I-140 has been approved. Your priority date maybe just became current with this in February with this positive Visa Bulletin that we've just seen, and so your priority date's current. And so normally, in the next few months, you would be likely called, maybe even as soon as February. You would be called by the U.S. Post, Embassy, or Consulate in your home country or wherever you're residing for your immigrant to visa interview. We are seeing some of those that are just being canceled outright by the Embassy and Consulate. It's my recommendation, which is exactly what Mike just talked about, that if you were on the banned list, that you actually go ahead and proactively postpone and cancel your interview. The reason, again, to reiterate why we suggest that is if you were to pursue your case and somehow it gets denied, it may be a lot more difficult to reset your interview than if your case is just sort of pending. I think one thing that's really important about all of this is if you're on any of these lists, whether it's the temporary pause for the 75 countries or one of the 20 or so countries that are on each of the other ban lists, you really want to talk to your immigration attorney. There are some exceptions to this. Some of them are what we call interest exemptions. We filed a few of them here. We unfortunately haven't received any positive responses yet, but it's still early, and so we may. There's also something called cross-chargeability. Cross-chargeability is, so for instance, if you are from Cuba, let's say, which is on this list, but your spouse is from Canada, you can often pursue your case if you have a Canadian passport. Sorry, I'm confusing two things there. Not cross-chargeability, but if you have dual passports, if you have a Canadian passport and a Cuban passport, you can pursue your case via your Canadian citizenship, even though you may also have, in my example, a Cuban citizen. So to answer your question again, Danielle, if you have your priority date and you are current, our recommendation is you postpone or cancel that visa appointment. But even before you do that, our recommendation is you talk to your attorney, because there may be exemptions or particular strategies that are important to your matter.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Good advice as always. I think no matter what, before you make any big decisions, especially with a lot of this changing and evolving and us all bringing you news in real time, you definitely want to talk to your attorney. You definitely want to make a game plan that's going to make the most sense for your application. So please do talk to your attorney. This is just general advice that we are sharing with everybody. So thank you, Chris, for that. So let's keep going through our hypotheticals, because I see a lot of questions with specific, specific questions. Oh, hello. Do we have another guest, a seasoned attorney to join us?
Yes, we have a Lori who's here because it's an e-learning day, so she's learning.
Ooh. Lori, do you want to say hi, everybody? Cute. Okay, our seasoned attorney. Maybe she'll make another appearance later. All right, Chris. So we talked about if somebody is on that travel ban list, their priority date is current. You've advised that they should postpone, rather let their case continue to pend so that they can pursue it at a later date. What if their priority date is current? Or sorry, what if their priority date is not current? Yeah.
Yeah, then the short answer is there's really nothing to do. We would not recommend that you go ahead or your employer goes ahead and withdraws your I-140 petition or revokes your I-140 petition. The USCIS has not given guidance, in particular with the 75 newest countries. In fact, my expectation is they will continue to process those cases, meaning if your case is even premium processing, you may get an approval notice in the next couple of weeks. Candidly, there's probably no reason to upgrade your case to premium processing. But again, you want to talk to your attorney because there are exceptions to this. If, however, maybe your I-140 has been pending for 14, 16, 18 months and it's finally becoming ready to be adjudicated by the USCIS, it may get adjudicated. We have seen USCIS, as a matter of policy, they seem to be taking what I view actually as a pretty smart idea, which is they are not processing I-140 cases whose priority dates are not close to current unless they are premiumed. And the reason for that is there's sort of no reason to process those cases in a world where the government, U.S. government, has restricted resources. They're, I think, smartly trying to prioritize the most urgent cases. So in any event, if you have a case that's pending, your I-140 is pending, our recommendation is that case continues to progress and that there's no withdrawal or really any action that you need to take. Indeed, there is some indication from the government, and maybe this falls into the I'll believe it when I see it bucket, but there's some indication in the government that they're going to continually review these. We have seen every 90 days or so, they're reviewing these lists and changing them, and maybe a country comes off it. President Trump is definitely transactional, and so he could be negotiating with one of those countries on something somewhat related, but not the same, like, for instance, tariffs. And as part of that negotiation, a country could come off the list. So we expect those I-140s will continue processing, although they may not get fully approved as long as they're on the list, because they could not, ultimately proceed forward with the visa interview or adjustment of status.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, so that's the travel ban. So we're talking about advice on the travel ban, whether your priority date is current and what you should be doing, when your priority date is not current and what you could be doing. Let's switch to this visa pause, which was the most recent news that we got. So Mike kind of touched on it a little bit, but let's just, really drill down. What are you both suggesting if your priority date is current or if your priority date is not current? Chris, can you go a little bit into detail here?
Yeah, sort of the same strategy, which is if your priority date is not current and your I-140 is processing, our advice would be you do nothing. I think that list of 75 might be fluid. And over the course of the next few weeks and months, we may see countries come off. Hopefully, no countries get added on. And so your I-140 can just progress through. We would probably see no reason to upgrade for premium processing. That would be unnecessary. If your priority date's current and you are ready to progress to a visa interview, perhaps you've already had a visa interview date set for, I don't know, February or March or something. We are seeing some consulates, embassies, through their own actions, postponing or canceling those appointments. We do recommend that you go ahead and postpone or cancel your appointment, because what we don't want is you to show up at your visa interview and somehow State Department, the embassies and consulates, deny your case, and then they ship it back to USAS, and then it becomes an extraordinarily difficult and time-consuming process to get your case back in line if indeed your country comes off the list.
Okay, so Mike, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right. So in response to a question like Ronaldo and Ashley had about how will the visa pause affect EB3 visas, it sounds like it's just a pause. It's just extra vetting right now. So continue on your processing, continue doing what you were doing. You just, when you get called for your interview, will want to be better prepared to answer questions, to make sure that you are able to be, as you said, not a public charge, and you don't expect to get your visa issued at the interview right away. Does that kind of sum it up?
Yes. No, I think that is fair. And I think the thing, and Chris mentioned it earlier, and I want to emphasize it again here now, because of the fact that some of this is changing almost daily, not only based upon announcements, but also based upon what is actually happening on the ground, is you want to make sure that you're in touch, your account manager, your rep, your immigration attorney, before you take any action relative to an interview. Well, my friend took this letter in and that was all good, and that happened last February. Fine, but that's not this February. So let's make sure we're getting individualized answers, because there are a lot of nuances. But I do think that the pause list, the 75 list, we're probably being more negative about that list than we need to be, because the reality is they could have simply said that for all immigrant visas being issued throughout the entire world, we're going to do a better job of making sure you're not a public charge. The public charge has always been a rule. You can't immigrate to the U.S. if you're potential being a public charge. And there's all kinds of things that employers do, affidavit support for family-based cases, etc. And they could have simply said, we're going to do a better job of vetting these cases. Instead, they picked on 75 countries, which makes it seem more significant. But our expectation is we're going to see delay in these, but that's the extent of it. We'll know more in probably 90 days, because that'll give us some idea as to people who took records with them to the consul, which in the past for employment-based cases would have been unnecessary. And employment-based cases are not exempt from the overall rule of public charge, but they didn't need all the financial documentation, but we're probably going to start sending it to try to help. So I think a lot of unknowns on that list of 75.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I think that's helpful. I see a lot of comments in this chat about feeling worried and feeling uncertain, which I think we can all understand. I think we're consistently getting news all the time. Different things change, different things evolve, and that very much makes sense. But I think in terms of thinking about the 75 list, thinking about it as a pause, an extra vetting step, as Mike is saying, is a very good way to think about it. And we will continue to bring you updates. Every month we're here giving immigration updates, giving you live information. So please make sure to come join us each month. We're taking your questions. We have our director of recruitment taking your questions in the chat. So we are here for you. We're here to give you the information. And hopefully that little piece of information that Mike just shared does make you feel a little bit better. But we will continue to monitor the situation and continue to see how this all plays out. So I'm going to turn to you, Chris. So we have a question from Royal. Royal says, do you think the bulletin may go forward significantly due to some countries being banned? So
yeah, this is interesting, Danielle. We've been kicking this around here. Mike and I and some of the AMN team were talking yesterday about this. File this under unintended consequences of this. The 75 countries, and this is all fresh news, and so some of the reporting, I haven't verified the reporting, but this is sort of what I've seen, is that approximately 38% of all U.S. green cards come from those 75 countries. Now, that 38% is all different pathways to green card. We almost always talk about the employment-based pathway here. There are other pathways. There's family-based pathways. So, for instance, if a U.S. citizen marries a Filipino, then that would be a family-based pathway, for instance. There's asylum. There's something called the diversity visa. And so that 38% encompasses all these different pathways. I've seen other reporting that between 20 and 25% of all employment-based cases come from these 75 countries. So one could make the case that if you are in one of the remaining countries, that at least for the duration of this pause, the Visa Bulletin may move 25% faster. There's also a chance that some of this was embedded in the Visa Bulletin that just came out, which is why we saw a greater progression than we might have otherwise have seen. I think a lot of this is just a little fresh, and I don't know that the State Department data is often pretty messy. So take all this with a pretty big grain of salt. But I think the general proposition that the person in the question asks is likely correct, which is that if you are from a country that's not on the list of 75, or for that matter, any of the other 39 or so banned countries, and there's of course some overlap there, it may move as much as 25% faster.
Okay, well, I guess we have some interesting things to look out for over the next few months to see how this continues to evolve and change and how things play out in the immigration world. So thank you, Chris, for giving that insight. I suppose we'll see if it does actually bring faster, what is the right word I'm thinking? Forward movement. That's what I'm thinking. Forward movement for other countries who are not on that list. Okay, so I'm going to turn to the chat. We have got a lot of questions. We have about half an hour left, so we're going to try to get to as many as we can here. So Mike, we have a question from Brian. This is actually a great question. I was just thinking about this. The Visa Bulletin states that the date for filing should be used to file adjustment of status. Does that mean that those with the priority date of October 1 and before can start filing adjustment of status?
Not October 1, but before October 1. So it's always the date before.
Okay, so
in February. Yeah.
Okay, so final action date chart and date for filing chart, it's the day before and all the time before. So it doesn't actually include that date.
No.
Okay, good to know. So for the final action date chart, it's everybody who is May 31st and before, because it's June 1 on the chart. Yep. Okay, good to know. Good clarification question, Brian. Okay, so we have a question from Leva. So, Chris, we're going to turn to you. So, Leva says, my I-140 hasn't been approved since May of 2024. What's the delay? Is this to be expected and normal? What are you kind of seeing in terms of processing times for I-140 approvals right now?
Yeah, May of 2024 is right. We're seeing as much as 18, maybe even longer months. So that would be May of 2024 would be what, about 20 or so months. So I wouldn't say that is that unusual. Having said that, anytime you've got a question like that with your case, I would definitely ping your attorney or your case manager, and they can let you know. Again, we talked about this a little earlier. If your case is not current, the USCIS, as a policy now, does not prioritize the processing of your case. Why? Because even if your case became current tomorrow and you're in May of 2024, you're still a year out from being current. So from the USCIS's standpoint, there's no real reason for them to process your case. Now, if your case is in country, perhaps you're on in the US on a TN visa or an H-1B visa or something like that, you're getting to the point where you're about 7 months out from being current for the adjustment of status, like we discussed a little earlier. And so my expectation is you should see in the next few months that your case will get acted on. But again, check with your attorney or your case manager. But in and of itself, while that's an extraordinarily long time, May of 2024, I don't think that's actually, unfortunately, that unusual.
Okay, well, there you go, Leva. Some good information. Also, just as a reminder, your priority date is established when your I-140 is filed. So just a reminder there. Okay, so Mike, we have a question from Ajayi. Ajayi is talking about something that I think Chris was mentioning with cross-chargeability, but I want to ask you, and we want to just expand on this a little bit. What happens to people that are from the banned countries, but are also a citizen of a country that's not included in the ban? So, Mike, what happens to those people? What can they do? Do they have options?
Yeah, so individuals that are on the ban list that have dual citizenship or carry passports from more than one country can be exempt from the ban. It is on a case-by-case basis. I would expect additional vetting. I would expect not as fast of processing, but you have what they call a limited exception from the complete ban. So make sure you let the attorney know that you also carry citizenship from such country. I believe what I've heard is that you also have to be processing in that country as well in order to, but a lot of this is new, and I'm not sure we're going to get consistency from one consulate to another, but there was some feedback from a consulate recently that you needed to be processing in that country. So bottom line, speak to your attorney on that issue, but there might be relief for you. Okay, well, there you go, Ajayi. So there's some information for you. So Chris, we have a question from Tululope. Tululope says, is there a ban on I-140 approvals? What about I-140 filings?
Yeah, so on I-140 approvals, there's no ban apparently. And again, as Mike was saying, some of this is really fresh, and I agree, stay tuned. There doesn't appear to be a ban on filings. And so if you file your case and you're including your citizenship from one of the banned countries, it appears that the USCIS will still process that case. Indeed, I'm almost certain they will process that case, because in all of this, they talk about things like exemptions and exceptions for national interest purposes. And so you wouldn't even be able to file your exemption or your exception until your I-140 was filed, approved, and current. Having said that, we have seen some of our clients that are going to probably hesitate to file cases for folks from those countries. Why? Because there's so much uncertainty now, but we are advising all of our clients that if they have already begun processing the case, to continue to process.
Okay, well, that is good news there. So no outright ban, and we will continue to see how things evolve. But that is good news there. Okay, Mike, we have a question from Starum. Starum says, can I enter the US with a non-immigrant valid visa while my I-140 is still pending? And then I'm going to tack on there, can you also enter with a tourist visa while your I-140 is still pending?
So if you're the issue that's being raised is when you're coming in as a tourist, you're saying I have a non-immigrant intent. I have the intent to come in, go to Disney, whatever you're doing, and then leave. And when you filed an I-140, you have an immigrant intent. Okay. Now, there's no rule that says you can't come in on a B1, B2, a tourist visa, while you have an I-140 pending or while you've got even an I-140 approved, if your I-140 is not current. Because at the time you're entering, you may have immigrant intent, but you can't act on it because your priority date's a year and a half away or whatever. So there's no opportunity to file for adjustment anyway. I would say in a situation like that, that you want to make sure you have very clear plans for coming in. Because at the border, you're going to have to convince them when you get off the plane in LAX, you're going to have to convince them that I'm coming here for my nephew's graduation. I'm going to be staying here. I've got a return ticket in 45 days. I'm going to do these 3 things in addition to the graduation. There's parties, etc. And then I'm going back. And then I think you're going to be okay. I've had people that have come in on visitors visas. Now, it is somewhat risky because if you do not get entered in, then you get put back on a plane right then and sent back. So you do want to be careful about that, but it is perfectly okay. Do not think, though, that if your priority date's close to current, that you can enter on a visitor's visa and then file an adjustment of status. That has all kinds of issues and will likely backfire significantly on you, and so we would certainly not encourage that.
Okay, thank you, Mike, for that information on somebody who may be coming on a tourist visa while their I-140 is still pending. So as we say, if you have specific questions about your case, ask your attorney. Always good to check before you make any decisions. So I see we have a question from Naheen. Naheen is asking, are there any openings for pediatric nurses? So Naheen, if you missed our introduction at the beginning and you are new to join us, welcome. We are AMN Healthcare International. We are the largest provider of both direct hire and staffing positions all across the United States. And we do have a need for pediatric nurses. So please apply on amnhealthcare.com/international, and our recruiters would be happy to help you. I also wanted to highlight for you, Naheen, how to make your application stand out. So if you are joining us and you are thinking, I would like to submit my application, the landscape is very competitive right now, and you really want to make yourself the most marketable, make your application stand out, and there are a few key things. So I'm going to give you some insight. This is what we are looking for. Somebody who has passed the NCLEX. That is your golden ticket. You need to have passed the NCLEX. This is very important to get started with your processing. Your specialty. So is your specialty something that is in demand, something that may be transferable? These are some things to think about. This next one is very important. Current work experience in an acute care setting. I talk to hospital facilities every day, and this is something that is extremely important to them. So if you do not have this experience, I highly encourage you to start working on this now. Get that current work experience in an acute care setting. That is something that they are looking for. Your type of qualification and degree matters. Do you have a diploma? Do you have an associate's? Could you work towards your bachelor's or even your master's? That's something to take into consideration. And your years of experience and type of hospital experience. Again, hospitals are really looking at experience, and this is something that you can do to make yourself stand out. And last, but certainly not least, is English language pass. So this is another way to just get your application ahead of the game. Pass your English language tests early. I know sometimes it feels like, oh, that's something I can do a little bit later down the line. I got time. Don't delay. make sure to pass those English tests while you are processing. You don't want to be waiting until you get to that consulate interview and then figure out that you haven't passed yet. So do that early. Make your application stand out. So those are just some of the ways that you can do that. Okay, let's get back to our questions. I see we got a lot going on in the chat. Thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you for your thoughtful questions. I know I have learned a lot today, so hopefully you all have as well. So Chris, we're going to turn to you. So there is a question from DKJ. DKJ says, I'm still using a filing chart from USCIS 2. What will happen to visa numbers if USCIS decides to implement a similar pause on adjudication of I-485s? Would this possibly lead to green cards? So I think we're going to have to make
I think what the question is driving at, or even if not, it's the way I'm going to answer it, which is the USCIS will pause I-485s for countries that are for people who do not meet the chargeability rules that Mike talked about earlier. So that's the simplest way to think about it. I think that's the simplest way to think about it.
All right. Well, there we go. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so Mike, we have a question from Grace, and I think you and I actually spoke about this a few days ago, so I think this is a good question. So Grace says, my question is for a Nigerian who now owns a British citizenship. Would the ban on Nigeria affect anything about the process?
So first of all, if your priority date's current, then I would reach out to your attorney to make sure that you have what you need and understand what's going to happen. My first question would be, are you in London? And is that the consulate you're scheduled for? And go from there, because that's the information we have, is that you need to be in the country being processed. Whether that changes a week from now, possibly. But you certainly seem on the face that there might be an exemption for you. So reach out to your attorney or your account manager, your rep, to see what's necessary for you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So there you go, Grace. There may be some options for you there. You definitely want to discuss that with your attorney. Sounds like where your current location is will definitely play a part in which embassy you'll be going to. So make sure to discuss with your attorney. Okay, Chris, we're going to change gears a little bit because I see more questions about a subject we are familiar with. I'm not sure if we have any updates, but we're going to ask and find out. So Ian is asking, what are the implications of the new H-1B wage-weighted system for nonprofit cap-exempt employers? Are they included in this new upcoming H-1B rule? Can you just give a little bit of background of what's the H-1B and what's this rule that Ian is talking about?
Yeah, so the H-1B cap is a two-step process where employers register their employees in March, and then usually the last week of March, the USCIS runs a lottery, and the lottery has traditionally been for every registration, each registration is worth one lottery ticket. Under the new rule, which just was announced, the U.S. government will give additional lottery tickets to higher paid individuals under, but they will also be considering geographic location and occupation. Under a somewhat complicated, but the bottom line is, if you are a nurse earning a middle wage in Cincinnati, and a nurse earning a high wage in New York City, those might be treated equal because nurses in New York City traditionally earn higher wages than here. So that's the new weighted lottery rule. You'll get 4 lottery tickets if your wage meets what we call the level 4 standard, which is the uppermost wage. You'll get 3 lottery tickets if yours is third level, 2 if you're the second level, and 1 if you're essentially at an entry level wage. And so that will determine who gets those coveted 85,000 lottery slots. Last year, the U.S. government received something like 450,000. So you can see that if your employer is paying a higher wage, maybe a level 4 wage, that having that added weight onto your application, the 4 lottery tickets, will greatly increase your chances of getting picked in that lottery. Now, the questioner also asked about cap exemption. Cap exemption, which is if you are a nonprofit employer, if the employer is a nonprofit and they are affiliated or actually a university, and there's 1 or 2 other lesser cap exempt cases. Those cases don't even go through the lottery, so this new rule has no impact whatsoever on those cases. And then the last thing that sort of overwhelms all of this is about 4 months ago, President Trump enacted what's called the $100,000 fee. And that means that if you are overseas, that the employer must pay $100,000 before they can pursue your H-1B. Whereas if you're in the United States for another reason, let's say you're a student on an F-1 visa, you're on a TN visa, an H-4, a variety of other statuses, and you're in the United States, that $100,000 doesn't apply. We here at the firm have yet to see any employers in the healthcare space who are willing to pay the $100,000 for obvious reasons. It's expected that the only companies that will be spending that $100,000 will be, really large employers who are paying outsized fees. And that, again, only applies to folks who are outside the United States. So anyway, so the new lottery rule, though, to really just point it to answer the question, the new lottery rule has nothing to do with H-1B cap exempt cases.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Good background. I just want to hone in on something that you said. So this 100K proclamation fee. So there is a potential for a national interest exemption. Is that right? Have you seen any of those been granted, or how have you seen that kind of play out?
Yeah. So the $100,000, you can either pay the $100,000, include that receipt in your H-1B petition, and then your petition will move accordingly. Or you can file what's called a national interest exemption, an NIE. And then if that national interest exemption is granted, you put that approval of the exemption granted on top of the H-1B. We have filed a whole slew of national interest exemptions here. And we have received no approvals, but we also have received no denials. We've simply received acknowledgement that our exemptions have been granted. I am unaware of any exemptions being granted out there. I've heard, internet rumors of like 1 or 2 that have been granted, but I have not been able to verify those exemptions being granted. So Danielle, there is a process to attempt a national interest exemption waiving the $100,000 fee, but at this point, it doesn't appear to do anything.
Okay, so sounds like H-1Bs for now are a little bit on pause. And we will continue to see.
But only for folks that are out of the country.
Right. Only for folks that are out of the country. Good clarification. Okay. Thank you, Chris. Good info. Okay, Mike. So I see we have a question from Ian. So Ian is saying, my priority date is now current. I'm one of those whose offer was rescinded. I'm sorry about that, Ian. That definitely sucks. Ian is asking, until now, I don't have a new employer. I may receive an email from the embassy interview soon. I don't know what to do and where to start again. I guess Ian is asking, if my date becomes current and he gets an interview and he still doesn't have a job placement, then what happens?
He should cancel the interview because his case is going to be denied. He is better off finding a new employer, which I'm sure he's working on. That new employer has to file a new I-140 for them. That I-140 has to be approved. And then, in theory, he could try to get an interview scheduled based upon the prior company's NVC record. And we've seen some good success in that, but we've also seen some situations where the consulate said, this new I-140 approval does not match the old case, so you need to go through the NVC again. You still retain the priority date, you're still current, but you have to go back through the NVC again and pay the fee bills and DQ'd and all that stuff again. But first step, do not go to an interview where you do not have an employer that is verifying that they have a job offer for you and confirming that, and look for a new job with an earlier priority date. That should be extremely attractive to a lot of employers.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. That's some good advice there for Ian, and we wish you good luck, Ian, and hopefully we will be able to help you there. So Chris, I see a ton of comments going back and forth about the travel bans, about the visa pause, and I just want to make sure that everybody is on the same page and that I'm understanding. So I'm going to ask you a clarification question that we've already discussed, but I want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. So I'm seeing a comment in here from somebody who says all visa immigrants, including EB3s, will be put on pause or be put on freeze, which to me sounds like they're not moving forward. I just want to clarify that I'm understanding correctly. If you're on that list of 75 countries that are under the visa pause, it's just a pause. There's going to be extra vetting. You need to be prepared for your interview. If you have an interview coming up, that means go forward. Keep processing, just be prepared. Not freeze, no more. That's not what we're saying. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Glad we are on the same page. Glad I'm understanding. Thank you for clarifying. Okay, so we have got a few minutes left. We will take as many questions as we can in the next few minutes. I do just want to add in, if you are joining us for the first time and you are hearing all of these terms, I know it can be very confusing. H-1B, EB-3, EB-2, dates for filing, final action. There's a lot of stuff going on here, everybody. And I'm actually a lawyer by background, and I still find it confusing every day. So you're not alone. If you want to learn more, we have our guidebooks on our website. We're going to drop the link in the chat. They are free. It's free information on the immigration process. You can go in, you can learn, and you can take education and matters into your own hands. This is your journey. You want to make sure that you fully understand. So we're going to drop that link in the chat, and you can go ahead and download those free guidebooks. Okay, so Chris, we have a question from Leva. So Leva says, at this point of retrogression, can one switch from EB3 to EB2? What is EB2, and is that an option for somebody?
So EB2 is a faster pathway to come to the United States in almost all instances compared to EB3. But the choice isn't yours if it's EB2 or EB3, or at least it's only in part yours. It's also your employer, and most importantly, what the requirements are for the position. In order to qualify for an EB2, broadly speaking, there's two major things that differ from EB3. The first, you must hold a master's degree or a bachelor's degree in 5 years of progressive experience in your profession at the time you're going to begin to file your green card case. And in some instances, if you're in the United States, it's at the time that you've actually been hired by the employer. So number one, you have to have a master's degree or a bachelor's +5. Number two, and this is the part where it gets tripped up for a lot of people, the position that you're applying for, that your employer is going to sponsor for the green card, also must require a master's degree or a bachelor's +5. So if you're a registered nurse, and maybe you have a master's degree in MSN, or maybe you've got 10 or 15 or 20 years of progressive experience, you meet the first standard. But if you're going to be a med-surg nurse in the United States, there's very few, probably no U.S. employers who require a master's degree for that role. And so your case is going to be ineligible for an upgrade from EB3 to EB2. On the other hand, if you're a physical therapist in the United States, the standard for a physical therapy has been a master's degree since the 1990s. And actually in the last 10 or 15 years, it's actually what we call a DPT, a doctorate in physical therapy. Those physical therapist positions almost surely qualify for the EB2 track. So again, you want to talk to your attorney, but broadly speaking, if the position you're applying for is not a master's degree position or a bachelor's +5, unfortunately, you're just not going to be eligible for the EB2.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Talking about the difference between EB2, EB3, if you're eligible. We're going to take one more question because I know we're almost at the hour, but I do see this question in many different forms, and I think it will be helpful. So Mike, we're going to turn to you. So I can see there's a lot of apprehension, understandably, with the uncertainty that's happening right now, the news that's coming out, ever changing. And I see a few questions in the same kind of vein asking, do we think that the ban will be lifted? Do we think that it'll be permanent? Do we think the pause will be lifted? Do we think the pause will be permanent? Is there any indication on anything that you've read and seen as to timing for either the ban or the pause?
Well, my opinion, for what it's worth, the pause I'm viewing as simply a delay until they can get better vetting processes in place relative to the public charge. And so I'm viewing that as no different than a processing delay. So I'm not considering that to be a major problem. The ban list, I think Chris used the phrase earlier that President Trump tends to be transactional. And so some of these countries are on the ban list for specific things, like they are not allowing us, for example, if you pull up the fact sheet from the White House, there is an explanation of why. For example, Gambia. It says that Gambia has historically refused to accept back its removable nationals, which means that, in theory, if the U.S. and Gambia reach a treaty agreement relative to returning of overstays and other individuals who are deportable, they could come off the list. And so I do think that there will be some flexibility in this list. And there was some movement in the list. However, I do think that the ban list, there are a lot of countries on this list that likely will stay on the ban list for the foreseeable future.
Okay, well, we appreciate the insights and thoughts, Mike, as we're taking a look at this list, the two lists. And I guess we will continue to see how things evolve, how things change, and we will continue to bring everybody updates and answer your questions each month on our immigration Q&A. So thank you, Chris and Mike, for your time today. A thoughtful discussion as always, and I really appreciate your time, as our viewers do as well. Have a good rest of your weekend, or good weekend, good start to your weekend. And we'll see you guys next month for our update. Thank you both.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thanks everybody.
Everyone.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I hope that you've got some helpful and useful information. I know times feel uncertain. Things are constantly evolving. Things are constantly changing. But let's try to stay positive as we go into 2026, especially with that very significant movement on the Visa Bulletin. That's a good way to start. And we will continue to keep tabs on these lists as they change, as they evolve. And we will continue to bring you live updates every month. We do these immigration Q&As. So please feel free to join, give us your questions. If we weren't able to get to them on our show, our director of recruitment is going to be taking the questions in the chat. So make sure you add them in the chat and we will get to you as soon as we can. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your time with us. We truly appreciate it. We're going to bring up our calendar for the upcoming months so you can see what other shows we have for you to look forward to. So we have our Onwards and Upwards shows, which are on Fridays at 7 a.m. On January 30th, we have an Onwards and Upwards show. It's going to be about a special topic that we will announce soon. So please keep a lookout for that. And on February 21st, we're going to do our next immigration Q&A with our two expert attorneys. So we will be taking your questions live and hopefully continue to have some good news. We also have our AMN Academy, which is at 5 a.m. California time on a Monday. We have our partner, 9.09er, and also Deirdre O'Regan, who is our director of recruitment, doing her Dream Job segment every fourth Monday of the month. So make sure to check out these free shows. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I appreciate your time, and I wish you all a happy 2026, filled with all good things and positive news and positive movement. And I will see you all again soon. Thanks, everybody. Onwards and upwards. Bye-bye.